Hello everyone, sorry for the pause. My microphone all of a sudden stopped working. Welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dursey and I'm the Executive Director of APA Ohio and Vice Chair of the New Urbanism Division, and I will be the moderator for today's webcast. So today is Friday, August 15th, and we will be hearing the presentation, Access Management and Complete Streets, where transportation networks meet land development. For technical help during today's webcast, type your questions in the chat box found in the webcast toolbar to the right of your screen, or you can call the 1-800 number shown. For content questions related to the presentation, type those in the questions box also located in the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. Upcoming on your screen is a list of sponsoring chapters and divisions. I would like to thank all of the participating sponsors for making these webcasts possible and free. Today's webcast is sponsored by the Iowa chapter. To learn more about all of our chapters, visit planning.org/chapters. And to learn about our divisions, visit planning.org/divisions. Upcoming on your screen is a list of webcasts for the rest of August and through September. To register for these webcasts, visit www.utah-apa.org/webcasts. To log your CM credits for attending today's webcast, visit planning.org/CM, select today's date and webcast, and you can see down there is the event number as well. This webcast has been approved for 1.5 CM credits for live viewing only. Some recorded webcasts are available for distance education credit. For availability of distance education, check our webcast webpage once again at utah-apa.org/webcast. And like us on Facebook, Planning Webcast Series, to receive up-to-date information on our upcoming sessions. We are recording today's webcast and it will be available on our YouTube channel. Just search Planning Webcast on YouTube. And a PDF of the PowerPoint will be available at ohioplanning.org/webcast presentations. And just as a side note, ohioplanning.org has just switched over to a new website, and the webcast presentations will not be available until the middle of next week. I'd now like to introduce our speakers for today. Chris Albrecht has spent the last 20 years in the transportation planning field as both a consultant and researcher. He holds a BS in Community and Regional Planning and MS in Transportation from Iowa State University. After several years in Minnesota working as a consultant, he returned to the slightly warmer climate of his alma mater as a researcher at the Institute for Transportation. In addition to his research duties, he serves as an adjunct lecturer for ISU's Department of Civil, Construction, and Environmental Engineering, as an adjunct lecturer for the University of Iowa School of Urban and Regional Planning. He also serves on Transportation Research Board's Winter Maintenance Committee and Roadway Safety Cultural Subcommittee. His work experience covers an oddly broad range of issues and clientele, including comprehensive transportation planning, advanced transportation technologies, traffic safety, corridor and major investment studies, road weather and maintenance, asset management, geographic information systems and spatial analysis, freight commercial vehicle operations and policy, transit, and access management. It is in this final area that Mr. Albrecht has the most extensive experience both in research and applications of roadway access policies and practice. Our second speaker is Sue DeBleek. Sue is a design fellow for Iowa State University Community Design Lab. She partners with communities to create design solutions. After studying planning, Susan received her master's in sustainable agriculture while initiating the Farm to College program at Iowa State University. Susan is an engaging educator with experience in local foods program development, health research, and community engagement evaluation. Most recently, Sue was a community food systems educator with University of Minnesota Extension. Her interests are graphic facilitation, local food systems, and public health. And I suppose that it's probably good to note that Sue is actually a previous student of Chris, so they have a great dynamic, and we're in for a great presentation today. So with that, I am going to transfer the reins over to Chris Albrecht.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Chris Albrecht again. I appreciate the opportunity to give the webcast today. I'd like to give some special thanks to the American Planning Association, the webcast series folks, plus Christine from APA Ohio, Ben Frost from New Hampshire, and Rich Russell from Iowa APA, who got me involved in this, and because of them, I'm here, for better or for worse. I'd also like to thank Susan, like she said, like Christine said, former employee of mine, one of my best students I've ever had. And today we're really going to try to find some common ground, as we discovered recently, some common ground, what my main focus of work is and hers, and I think you'll all benefit. First of all, as you would have seen or in the announcement of this webinar, is that the basic principles of driveway and minor roadway access management is going to be the main focus and how they fit with complete streets. These sometimes conflicting goals are seen as conflicting areas because one is a little more engineering focused on the transportation side and the other is focused on the land use side of it and really looking more away from motorized vehicles to the bicycle and planners, or bicycles and walkers, excuse me. So that can cause some problems, and I'm going to address those. Me being in the middle as a transportation planner, I kind of see both sides all the time, so I'm going to try to find that common ground. But overall, I want to give the planners on the line a better understanding of some of the commonalities of sound access management and some traffic management principles, and how to incorporate that into your work in land use and site design especially, and how we can all work together. As I mentioned, I'm Chris Albrecht. I've been working in the field for a long time. At Iowa State, I was a consultant before that up in Minnesota. I work at Iowa State and the University of Iowa. I'm also the Director of Planning and Policy at the Norwell Group here in Salt Lake City, which is where I'm broadcasting from today. Susan, former student of mine, as you said, has been working for Iowa State for a while, but lots of experience in the past in sustainable agriculture. Had worked with me in GS and transportation. She's really carved out a nice niche for herself at Iowa State as well. Today's agenda is derived from a bunch of scribbles on a whiteboard from a few weeks ago when I met with Sue to talk about, actually not even about this webinar. We originally taught, Sue came back to the university, we wanted to touch base professionally and talk about where our goals can meet. One of my jobs is to work with the engineering college and the institute and work with the planners on the softer side or pre-engineering side. And so Sue came over, and then after we talked, we realized that she'd have a lot to lend to this presentation, and which I think is fabulous. I like what she does, and we really had a great time in this room. I think we used every whiteboard in the room, and we came up with some great ideas to talk about. So that's what we based today's agenda on. First of all, I'm going to go and ask Christine to, number one on the agenda was the audience background and understanding. I'd like to get an idea of what the background is of the folks on the line right now, so I can talk, a little more in detail where I need to, or a little less in detail, depending on your experience. So go ahead, Christine.
Okay, I just went in and put the poll together. So if everyone could go ahead and answer that poll, and we'll close it in just a few moments.
You can say low, medium, and high, or something like that if you'd like.
Yeah, I did excellent, good, fair, poor. I know nothing about access management. Those were the selections that that I put out.
Great, thank you, Christine.
Okay, I think it's pretty stable now. We have about 76% of our folks voted, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll and then just share the results with everyone. So, I mean, honestly, it looks like there's a fair amount of people that do know a little bit about access management, and a few that just don't know anything, and I think we have a good cross-section of folks here today.
Okay, great.
Is that good? Can I give you your screen back now?
You may give me my screen back. Thank you.
Thank
That's good to know. I just want to make sure I know who I'm talking to. So hopefully, no matter what your level of background, you're going to get something out of today, at least a refresher, and as you move forward, some ideas and ways to integrate things, at least maybe some ammunition, I guess to use the word, when you go out in certain situations, talk about the need for access management and for complete streets and how they work together. And I think Sue's got some really good examples of what she's done in Des Moines that will be of interest to many of you. So first of all, I want to talk about the second agenda item, which is what is access management in general. I usually do this to all kinds of different crowds, but I want to talk about it in terms of what it means to the normal transportation guy like me. The Federal Highway Administration simply says it's the process that provides access to land development as well as preserving the flow of traffic on the road system. Now, this is really a conflict area in a lot of ways where we want traffic to move. The roads are there to move traffic, but some of the roads are also there to provide land access. So we have to give people access to their land uses, their businesses, and their homes especially. But we also need to move traffic, and that's where this is also seen as competing goals. But we can work together, and they don't always have to be competing. Where I've highlighted here is the flow of traffic, capacity, and speed. These are the words in the definition of access management that might cause the most consternation for planners, because flowing traffic means fast. Capacity means lots of cars. Speed means once again fast. We want to move those cars, and that's not necessarily a really great thing for a community, having that traffic there. So we need traffic calming and other things. The whole idea is to separate these uses. Through all my career, I've been talking about separating uses. You have different uses. You're reducing that conflict between high-speed traffic on major corridors and the low-speed land access, pedestrian and bicycle-friendly traffic. So that's what we're going to talk about today in a little bit. And I apologize. This slide comes in as a oops, and I went back. Now I get to go there. Sorry. This is a slide I actually use in my class that I teach at Iowa State. I want to step back to what transportation is. So before we talk about transportation being necessarily a bad thing or something that can be dangerous, we need transportation. It's the foundation of our society, and I tell my students everywhere there's a better transportation system, there's a better economy and a better standard of living. So we need transportation, moving our goods, it's especially the larger network. But it's the movement of people and goods and the mobility of a society, and that can mean on macro level, moving goods across the country, but that also means our folks getting from their front door to school or to the market. So to put it in context, that's what we need to keep in mind. We have both those sometimes competing needs. So I also use one of my favorite slides is to use the two primary functions of a roadway are to, first of all, move through traffic and then provide access to property and land uses like the definition says. So if you look at a transportation network on a whole, the roadways from our entire network fall into that hierarchy at one point. And I'm not sure why my slides keep advancing. That's my fault, I'm sure. But the through traffic, as through traffic increases and access to property increases, we get to where the different levels of roadways fall. So freeways, the interstate system, most of you who drive the high-speed freeways, are really almost entirely focused on providing through traffic. We want to get people from New York City to San Francisco. We want to get people from Des Moines to Kansas City. We want to get people from point A to point B as quickly and efficiently as possible. We don't allow access onto those roadways. Any freeway, the entire interstate system and the rest of the freeways, we don't want any access, no direct driveway access. Everything's non-at-grade interchanges. But then at the other end, our local, they give a cul-de-sac. We really want a cul-de-sac, even though it's a very short little chunk of pavement. We want to provide land access to 5, 6, 7 homes on a very small area. And through traffic is absolutely not, especially on a cul-de-sac, is not of most concern. So there we usually don't have a problem. It's in the middle, in the arterial and collector systems, that we often have a problem. And just to give you guys some focus of what I'm talking about here, for those who aren't familiar with the overall classification system. This is Des Moines, Iowa, and as you see the different roadway classifications going from the interstate, going through to the major principal arterials, minor arterials, it's like the trunk of a tree. And a good community plan and a well-planned community will have a good balanced system of public roads, from large roads down to your smaller local roads. But also what's good to point out is also in Des Moines you have the bicycle network. And this not only shows the level of service in the bicycle network, but also, if you notice, shows that a lot of these bicycle networks are the same places as the roads. So the idea of complete streets is very important when looking at access management, because as we manage access, we're going to help provide more of a better experience and safer experience for the rest of the world, the bikers and the pedestrians and so forth. So that's really where Sue and I are coming together. Okay, for those of you modelers out there, modeler geeks, I teach modeling at Iowa State, and so when I teach my students I get to this topic, and when we start talking about a roadway network, we start talking about the major roadways and how a network and what we call traffic analysis zones are set up. So real briefly, if you look at a typical part of a town, here we have 4 major roads, we have a river, and then we have the green area with land development. We don't use all those minor roads. We usually take those out. So those minor roads, they're minor are collectors and local roads that we don't factor into a model. We usually represent those through a centroid connector, as you see in the next slide. So that's the same idea, is that we really have to model those local roads. We're really worried about moving traffic on those major roads. Okay, then getting back to that slide about the functional hierarchy of roads, one of our typical problems is that arterials often provide too much access. Anybody who lives in Ames, Iowa, where I live, know that lunchtime on South Duff Avenue is not fun to get through there. It's not fun to turn right, turn left. You just can't do it. We're providing too much access on many of our major roads where they should be providing through movements. Then at the same time, local roads and some of the collectors serve excessive through traffic, and that's where we leads to demand for traffic calming. We're getting too much of our traffic pushed onto the side roads, the local roads that really are for neighborhoods, they're for providing access to property, they're for walking and biking and so forth. So this middle ground, the non-cul-de-sac and the non-interstate freeways, is where we have this conflict. So ultimately what we're trying to do is provide that balance of a system. And the engineers on one end, and I'm saying engineers because I work with engineers, we mainly focus on the roadway network, and the planners and the community folks on the other end need to find that balance where they have both types of roads in their system. They have roads that carry traffic and roads that provide just direct access. Finding that balance has been a key. So every time in my career I've gone to different areas and talked about access management, it's been where they don't have that balance. That balance has been a hard thing to find through political reasons, through just lack of planning, maybe taking shortcuts in different ways. But we have to always commit to the fact that we need a complete and balanced roadway network. So how can planners talk to engineers? This was a drawing Sue actually did, and it was kind of funny. We were talking about talking and coming with ideas, but I have fallen in kind of a strange area in my career. I'm a planner by trade, though I've studied transportation and worked with civil engineers, some of the best civil engineers and traffic engineers anywhere. And they're great folks, and they mean well, and the planners mean well, and they're great folks, but I kind of fall in the area where I fit into neither group. If you've been to APA, the transportation planners are always kind of the kids in the corner, that we're not always into the mainstream planning topics. Well, when I go to ITE and other traffic engineering areas, the transportation planners always fall into the corner as well. So we kind of fall in this odd area where we don't necessarily always have the voice we need to, but it's a unique area where we can see both sides, and that's where I think I can provide some help today. Okay, so back to what is access management. Now, it sounds like most of you know generally what access management is, and I'm going to break these into a couple different categories. These are the types of things that are done that are considered managing access, but many of them are retrofit engineering activities on roads that already exist. Not always. Sometimes we build roads with really well-managed access ahead of time, and that's really what I want us to move towards. And some of these lower ones we'll talk about more in a planning context. But first of all, the first couple, driveway consolidation and corner clearance and clearing the functional area of an interchange, or an intersection, excuse me, is one that these areas really fall onto the off the driven path of the roadway. So this is where we have several driveways, for example, I'll show you a little bit later, where we just have too many driveways that cause too many conflicts. So we're trying to close driveways that would provide that through movement, especially around corners, and consolidating driveways in a lot of places. And this often happens where commercial districts, especially business or commercial districts, have really gone too far in allowing access onto the roadway. And it causes crazy congestion for the most part. Anybody who lives in Ames, Iowa, again, can talk about Lincoln Way. Every city has one like that, though. So all of you across the country know the place that you just don't like driving through that corridor because there's so many people turning in and off the corridor and causing a lot of delay. So we'll talk about a few examples of those in a minute or so. The others fall kind of within the traveling way of the roadway. This happens immediately right down the center of a roadway. Continuous two-way left turn lanes, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, and how they can actually be used as a complete streets tool. Medians, putting medians just around an intersection, as well as raised or even flushed medians continuously along a roadway. We see that in a lot of big cities where it's gotten to the point we just do not allow left turns. You right in, right out into land access, and we just do not want crossing traffic across that major roadway. The third area of these three are alternate access ways. So this really, once again, off the roadway in the land development side of the world, we're really trying to design our developments to fit better into the overall system as a node rather than strip development, for example, and I'll talk once again about that. So better internal site design using frontage roads and more increasingly using backage roads, especially in areas where you see new urban development, where you want the traffic calming, you want the people walking along the front, along the roadways, the storefronts on the roadways, and the parking in the back. 15 years ago, 20 years ago when I started this, that wasn't as much used, but people have discovered that that's not only a great way to showcase businesses or an area, also and provide longer storage in the off streets as well. Ends up, because we also often have some problems with frontage roads and storage on the off the main street or on that minor road approach. So I won't get into too much more of that, but really this all often involves just coordinating with land use planning. So as you're designing sites, you need to talk to the engineers and the roadway guys, make sure you're all on the same page, but where you want that access. And then existing driveways, you can improve geometrics at a driveway without actually closing the driveway. And with internal site design and the geometrics guiding turning traffic where you need to be, you can actually increase safety quite a bit, increase traffic flow. And when we increase safety on the roadway, we're also increasing safety, especially when it comes to driveways, we're increasing safety for bicycles and pedestrians as well, which is a common goal we have. So here's just a quick shot at what driveway consolidation is, or corner clearance. Very, very simple, obviously. You used to have a bunch of driveway locations. You close a few of them, you consolidate a few of them. You especially remove those driveways near an intersection so they can make that intersection function much more conveniently or much more appropriately and function better for the most part. So you see the before and after geometry. That's pretty simple stuff, just less driveways, and especially near the corners. Continuous left turn lanes, now getting out into the traveled way. Continuous left turn lanes provide that left turn, getting them out of the way. And I've drawn this in the board for Sue. I didn't put a new drawing in, but what's neat about continuous left turn lanes is that left turns in 90% of the world, except England and people that drive on the wrong side of the road, as far as I'm concerned. Everywhere else, it's left turns that cause most of the problems in traffic. Granted, driving along roadways such as this, going from left to right, let's say east to west, turning right into a driveway and right out of a driveway, yeah, there's a potential conflict there, and it's not always super safe, but it's those left turns that not only cause some of the worst collisions and the worst accidents, they also cause the most delay. So left turns are really the problem, and with continuous left turn lanes, or what we call twiddles, or medians, channelized intersections, we're really removing those left turns. And for example, I talked with Sue about this, is that in Minnesota, her home state, where I used to live, and several other places since then, Des Moines area and others around the country, we've seen 4-lane arterial roadways converted to 3 lanes, where you have 1 lane of through traffic in each direction, and a continuous left turn lane often provides you a good 6 feet or at least 5 feet of extra roadway right away on either side, with just simply repainting that often can be used for bicycles as a bicycle lane. And actually they function at up to a certain level in the high teens, of thousands of vehicles a day, 19,000 vehicles a day or so. They function just as well, actually better than a 4-lane, because you don't have that decision of should I be in the left or right lane to make then those in the left lane sometimes are turning left, sometimes are going through. When you're that 1-lane through lane on a 3-lane continuous left turn cross section, you know that you're going straight or maybe turning right. You don't have to worry about the left turns. They remove themselves. So 2-way left turn lanes have been a big benefit to a lot of commercial areas, especially where there's already a lot of driveways. It helps. Now, we don't always want a lot of driveways, but this is a nice retrofit way to at least remove some of that. In this case, we widened the roadway, but a lot of times you don't even need to widen the roadway, like I said, going from a 4-way to a 3-way conversion. Obviously, medians at intersections, we classify medians at intersections because of those the extreme number of left turns, and raised medians along an entire section. It's pretty much the same area. You channelize at an intersection, you also channelize throughout when you have breaks in that median, but a raised median for extended distances will really cut down on that, obviously, left turn conflict. It doesn't make people very happy when they get across the road, though, but this is a result of this conflict between, we have too much traffic, we want land access, we want both, and this falls in that gray area, as I showed before, where we just can't do both all the time. Turning lanes, right turn lanes also help with a lot of rear-end crashes coming towards an intersection or a driveway. It removes that right turn traffic, or it lets them decelerate without really interfering too much in the mainstream traffic or causing, well, mostly rear-end accidents. Who aren't always as severe, but it does help traffic, and they're not quite as intrusive as some turn lanes or widening a roadway. The other time, the left turn lanes, those are the crashes, or excuse me, those are the movements we want to really remove from the traffic stream. Those are the ones that cause the right angle collisions and the really severe ones because people are hitting at right angles rather than bumping each other's bumpers. Those are very dangerous. We want to get those left turns out of the way. So we channelize to left turns, providing lanes where we can at oftentimes. But overall, what's better to do is actually design the road the right way in the first place. So by retrofitting is great, but if we can develop the land development on a road where we minimize the access onto a major roadway and internally design our circulation on that development, we're going to have much more success for longer term. Safety, operations, even the internal circulation. I see so many places that you'll see development next to each other and they won't even provide internal access between a Denny's and a gas station, or McDonald's and a Taco Bell. You will have to actually go out onto the main roadway. I'm sure you've all seen that. You're all shaking your heads, where we've had to go out onto a main roadway to get to the thing next door. That's utterly ridiculous, but that happens because people don't communicate, they don't work together, and there really isn't much of a pressure to do that in a lot of cases. But we need to really get that message across why it's important to get the people off that main roadway. So here we see a traditional frontage road. The one downside to a frontage road is I think I'm going to use my cursor here. The main roadway going east-west here, the side street coming in, and then, or side street or a major driveway, and then you have a frontage road off that road. They've worked great for years at lower volumes. So after you get a certain volume on the main roadway and on the side roadways, what I'd call the north-south road here, you get this neck in the frontage road where that often starts backing up in traffic, and those frontage roads are worthless at that point. So then we start blocking off frontage roads, so you can't cross from frontage road to frontage road. So once again, frontage roads just don't allow that storage for right and left turns onto the main roadway in a lot of cases. So luckily, over the last couple decades, we've used a lot more backage roads. We provide that longer storage in the neck on the minor roadway, and then that also gives us a chance to get the front doors of the businesses and the businesses closer up to the main roadway in a lot of cases to the appropriate distance, not too close, so that it interferes with sight distance, but getting it up there so that we can have more of a downtown feel in a lot of places, or have that new urban development. I'm thinking North Ames and many places you go to now that really try to rejuvenate that feeling. It's been very successful, and a lot of people really like it. And by the way, it also helps with traffic when you move those backage roads or the internal circulation away from that roadway. Okay, so a little bit more about the internal site design is just getting people off the roads, off the major highways in specific points, not many driveways. We focus them on one driveway or one minor roadway and let them circulate amongst the land development, let's say a city block or whatever it might be, that's between the major roadways, that people are circulating there at lower speeds. And they're not turning in the influence of the higher influence areas of the higher speed roadways. Okay, so once again, it really comes down to balance. It's finding balance between getting people around at higher speeds and higher volumes and balancing that with getting people to where they want to be safely. And also providing that and we'll find, as Sue talks, we'll find some common ground, the fact that when we close driveways and we do a lot of these access management things, these practices, we're going to help complete streets initiatives as well, because when you close a driveway, when you do a lot of these, that means a person has less conflicts. The pedestrians, the bicycles, and as Sue talks, we'll see some of these locations, and we'll be able to talk a little bit later about specific sites that we can chat about. Next, I'll hand the controls over to Sue, and I think I need to go to WebEx. I need to go to that thing, give control, and then Sue DeBleek will now take over, and she's going to talk about the complete streets in general and the work she's doing in Iowa. It's some neat stuff she's doing. So go ahead, Sue.
Thank you, Chris. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Wonderful. All right, I still see your screen. Let's see if it...
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't give it to you. It'd probably help if I did the right thing.
Hey,
there
we
go. All yours. Sorry about that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. And thanks to Christine for hosting us today. It's exciting to get to talk to you all on this rainy Friday afternoon. We really need the rain here in central Iowa. So my name is Susan DeBleek, and I have a background, as Chris and Christine both said, in planning and sustainable agriculture. And one of the things that I'm passionate about, let's see if this is going to pull up. One of the things that I'm passionate about is community engagement and also walkable cities. And so I wanted to talk to you a bit today about some of the work that's happening in Iowa thanks to the Community Design Lab and our partners. So I am a design fellow here at the Community Design Lab, and the lab is underneath two umbrellas. So we are between Extension and also the College of Design. So I like to say that in terms of Extension, we're sort of like a design center that serves Extension. And then in terms of the College of Design, we're one of their many outreach opportunities for the communities that are around the state. And in terms of our mission, we're focused on partnering. We pull local knowledge from communities and also provide design research. And the goal that we're after is to create equity and resilience. So this is a map of some of the communities in Iowa that we serve. You can see that our great state of Iowa is shaped on the west side by the Missouri River and on the east side by the Mississippi River. And we've got a range of communities from very rural Cresco in the northeast to our biggest urban center, which is Des Moines in the central. One of our three organizational focuses is health and wellness. And so when the Design Lab is talking about health and wellness, we're talking about providing trail design so that there are more recreational opportunities within a community. We work with communities around open space networks for community building, for social capital, and also for more play. We work on local food initiatives such as school and community gardens. And then we also work on complete streets, which is one of the reasons that Chris was generous enough to invite me in to talk today. I'm sure you've all heard of complete streets. Basically, complete streets are for everyone. They are not the highway or the interstate that Chris talked about that's only for automobiles, and it's not the cul-de-sac that's just for people that live in a particular neighborhood, but there's streets that are used for everyone. So like Chris was saying, there's a range of different types of roads, and you all know that complete streets do not belong everywhere, but there are a lot of streets where we can make them more complete. And the biggest piece, I think, is that it's enabling all users to have safe access. So it's easy to cross the street, it's easy to bike to work, and it's easy to walk to shops. And just a little personal note, I do own a vehicle, I do drive to work, and I prefer to bicycle to work. So for me, complete streets are those places where you can do either, and both of them are a safe alternative to the other. Whoopsie. So one question that I think you might be asking is, in terms of this idea of health and wellness that the Community Design Lab is interested in, why should we as planners or as engineers or as urban designers, why should we care about health now? We all know that city planning came out of the idea of public health when it was first created, and we've come back to this point where we're talking about health and we have a role in health. And for me, there are two reasons. One is that the proliferation of automobile-focused planning has really focused on traffic flow and getting people to the places they need to get faster and providing ample parking. But as a result of that and many other factors that have been happening, we are seeing obesity levels at a rate we've never seen before. So for example, in 2005, we found out that the New England Journal of Medicine published a report that showed that the current generation of youth is for the first time in U.S. history not going to live as long as their parents, which is pretty sad that we're setting our kids up for not living an extra amount of time that their parents would be living. And also, if the current obesity rates that we've got right now in the U.S. continue to rise at the rate that they have been rising, everyone in the U.S. will be obese by 2080. So we've seen this huge spike, and we as designers and as planners need to start thinking about what we can do to help public health. So one question is, can complete streets help? I don't think that planners, all of the onus is on us to make sure that obesity rates don't rise, but I think we can all agree that making more everyday physical activity opportunities for people is important, and I think complete streets can do that by providing safe places, increasing walkability, encouraging bicycling, and in general, as the public health folks like to say, making the healthy choice the easy choice for all of us. So as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to give just a few examples of some of the work that the Community Design Lab has been doing and how that has been translated for the communities into these health projects. So here we've got a photograph and a map from Waukon, Iowa. Waukon is up in the northeast part of the state. And what we were focused on is trying to understand how to make the community stronger and also make their economy stronger. And they've got a great main street, but they don't have a lot of sidewalks outside of that area. So you can see on the map that the purple are schools, the green are parks, and all the orange dotted lines are all the places where no sidewalks exist. So you can see that for a child who lives in a neighborhood that's very close to the school, they don't have a sidewalk to walk on. And same with parks, that if you want to get to parks, you just don't have access to be able to get to those places. And for us, it's important, like I said in our mission statement, that we collect local knowledge and then apply design research expertise. And so this is one example of the local knowledge that we were collecting from the community about the sidewalks and the walkability of Waukon to try to understand where they were finding problems and what issues they felt like they had. So you can see that they'd like to have a trail that could connect all of the green spaces in their town. They'd like more safe sidewalks for all ages and just more sidewalks in general. So we're moving from Waukon, which is a small town that is easily walkable and everything within it is very close at hand, to Des Moines, which is our biggest metropolitan center and has quite an array of different types of streets, as you saw earlier when Chris showed the highway and different street maps of Des Moines. So in Des Moines, we were working along 6th Avenue corridor, which is a north-south corridor. So right now this image is looking south towards downtown Des Moines. And the project was focused on well-being and also placemaking. And so we partnered with the community to, again, get their ideas about what their needs were. And it came through that they wanted to manage stormwater. They wanted to explore parking options so that they could decrease the amount of parking. And they also wanted to increase the pedestrian culture. I have experience working along this corridor, and I know that the sidewalks are very narrow and there are a lot of people walking in this area, but it's not especially safe both from a traffic perspective or from sort of the aesthetic perspective of where you feel like you should be safe walking. So we came up with some designs that could improve connectivity within their community, and one of the outcomes that we saw is that when we provided this information to the 6th Avenue community, they did start to redevelop differently. So here you can see that we were at the intersection of College Avenue and 6th Avenue, and on the western side, on the left-hand side, you can see that these new buildings were built. And instead of making driveways that would come off of 6th Avenue, they instead created an alleyway where people are parking, and then this walkway that connects people to the sidewalk. So you can see in just this one example how much that differs from on the right side where you see a few driveways and huge parking lots that people are coming in and out of. So it's nice to see how access management and complete streets and stormwater management can come together really nicely to start getting at some of these issues about economics, about social capital, about health, and about stormwater management. And to pull us out of Des Moines for a moment, I wanted to go to the eastern part of the state to Maquoketa. So in Maquoketa, a Main Street building had burned down, and we all know that these vacant lots that can be created by burnings or other sorts of disasters could drag down the surrounding communities. But instead, what the Community Design Lab wanted to do when we partnered with the town of Maquoketa was to use this vacant lot to activate the town's identity and create something new. So what we did is we designed a city park for the vacant lot along with community input, and this would provide for community events and open space. You can see that the community park is located in this red area, and so it's connecting the yellow, which is sort of the historic district, to the government district, and that this entire corridor, if it was a complete street, was making it easier for people to walk and bicycle to some of the shops, and that they were being drawn to this open space on foot or by bicycle or by car, and that all of these uses were safe. And so you can see here an image of the complete street that we had rendered, which has a bicycle lane with a family. It's got street trees and then also people walking, and there are cars parked and driving. And so we can create these types of streets in both urban areas and in rural areas to make it so that the active choice is the easy choice. So one of the questions that I feel like I have and I like to address both within the Community Design Lab and at Iowa State University is this question of how designers can support well-being and health. To me, as designers, we absolutely motivate communities. We show them where they should be doing certain types of activities. And so to me, designers can support health. We can start to combat this obesity epidemic that we're seeing, and we can do this in one way by providing complete street designs and also supporting our communities with best practices and with policies. So that's where I'm going to wrap up. I want to say thank you again, and my contact information is here if anybody wants to follow up later. And I can hand everything back over to Chris so that he can continue to take us down the well-managed road.
All right, thanks, Sue. Now I'd like to move on to agenda item 4. In everything you saw, and I think it was great that Sue mentioned that, especially the Des Moines corridor, where we had talked about it, and we're both very familiar with the corridor, that access management was really what they were doing. I don't know if they knew they were doing access management, but essentially it was. So I mean, it really was in concert with each other, providing complete streets and really controlling the access or the extended access. We see many places where this is happening, and they become very popular for all kinds of uses and really more of a sense of place. So as we do this, we provide safer locations for walking and pedestrians. They become more inviting, more fun in a lot of ways, and aesthetically more pleasing, not only more welcoming and safe feeling, just from a public safety sort of perspective, but also become healthier places and more fun places to be. So I think this all just fits in really good. So as Sue and I have gone along, we've really found some common ground and some of our common goals. So as you see this complete street, which happens to be in the Des Moines area, we're seeing parking still available. We're seeing bicyclists be able to bicycle, but not many driveways here. They have on-street parking, but we've moved the driveways off. We had that, as Sue talked about, in a couple other places, Maquoketa and such. We just don't have as many driveways, and that really helps the bicycle. As a cyclist, I'm sure you would much rather see fewer driveways where cars could be pulling out in front of you, because it really hurts to get hit by a car. I've never been hit by a car personally, but I think it's not very comfortable. So you definitely want to provide this type of environment. And I think we have a lot of goals in common for that reason. I just talked about some of the safety benefits of access management. I don't think I need to sell access management to you folks, because we all want safer roads, and we want better traffic operations, but we also want to make sure that everything's balanced. But for the most part, we improve safety by managing access, closing those left turns possibilities, reducing conflict points. We improve traffic operations, preserve the investment in the roadway, because once a roadway breaks down functionally, we often want to build another roadway, which eventually breaks down because we don't manage it. So really that cycle is just never going to end unless we do the right thing. It protects the environment. When traffic flows better, we have better effect on the environment, an improved effect on the environment, because the efficiency of the vehicles traveling there, they don't have as many emissions. And then economic development, Maquoketa, Des Moines, Waukon, all these places in Iowa, these have become little economic engines for their communities, providing that folks coming back, spending money, providing tourism, whatever it may be. It really does help. So there's really, it's a no-brainer for the most part. So how can we reduce conflict? Stealing Sue's little drawing again of her Pac-Man Muppet people. How can we reduce that conflict? Well, once I mentioned conflict, but I didn't describe. We all can picture that. Yeah, it's not really cool to run into another car, but this actual diagram shows specifically when we provide access management on a three-legged intersection onto a four-leg, a minor road onto a four-lane intersection or roadway. We have 11 conflict points. By just eliminating those left turns, or channelizing the left turns, we reduce it to 6 conflict points. You can see this from all the different different ways of managing access. If you look at across the board, we're limiting conflict points. And so all those conflict points represent potential crash locations, and many of those potential crash locations are serious types of crashes, the right angles, when you're pulling out in front of someone hitting broadside. Those are very serious. So those are the ones we mostly eliminate. And this all comes down to a functional area of an intersection, too, where you're going to see a lot of that slowing traffic, those rear-end accidents, a lot of that conflict, once again, is near an intersection. Every intersection has a physical intersection, but a functional area as well. You need some storage behind the stop bars on the major roadway and the minor roadway for the most part. You need some deceleration space, decelerating down towards the signal or stop sign, where it might be, decelerating for the left and right turns, and then that reaction time ahead of that. So you really, when you have a lot of driveways in this storage, deceleration, reaction time zone, you're just asking for trouble. So the whole idea is, especially in that first couple hundred feet away from the intersection, you really want to reduce or eliminate driveways. So if you prohibit medium brakes, you can prohibit things like that. You can do all kinds of different methods to reduce traffic, but you really got to protect that conflict. You reduce conflict. You really have to protect that functional area of the intersection. So allowing driveway access within there, it could cause serious operational and safety concerns. It's just something we don't want to do. I'm going to talk real quick. I think we all get this. The faster we go, the more likely we're going to have a crash. So from 10 to 20 to 30, your likelihood of getting in an accident because of reaction time, because of just the fact that more cars can actually be going and exposure, we're going to have an exponential increase in likelihood of crashes. Once again, here we show as access density increases as well. So speed and access density, higher speeds and higher access density means more crashes, period. And we've shown that over the years in research we started doing in the late 90s in Iowa. We looked at several case studies and just saw that, and they were all conversions from high density of driveways to lower density driveways, putting in access management principles, we saw a reduction, a significant reduction in crashes. So that relationship between the commercial driveway density and the crashes is very evident. And in most of those cases, we were talking commercial. All the studies we did and all the things I've so far talked about today have been in commercial areas and commercial and urban areas. I do a lot of access management work on high-speed, 4-lane or greater roadways that have great access, and separating and providing access at very limited spacing and far distance spacing apart, because right-end crashes at 65 miles per hour are very, very serious. That aside, I'm going to put that aside because that's really not, for the most part, the planner's territory. We're talking more, a little bit slower speeds, much higher volumes, and lower level roads where we get this. So the commercial driveways, especially in the urban areas, are a problem. You can see, for example, and most of you probably have similar examples in your cities. The same highway running through Ames, Iowa, South Duff Avenue is a commercial area, is very difficult to drive through, a lot of conflict, but just as many driveways on the north part of 69 and Grand Avenue in Ames. But because it's residential, and those of you who know the traffic generation, we just don't have as many cars generated from, or trips generated from residential areas, so it's really not a problem up there. So really what I'm talking about for the most part is urban areas, commercial areas, where you have those high volumes and traffic generation. So here's we don't really need to worry as much in residential areas. So I'm going to focus on those areas, which the 7 studies we did in Iowa did focus all on commercial corridors, and a significant 40% reduction in accidents over time, before and after. It just makes sense. Okay, so now that I've talked about why it's important, and I know I only have a few minutes left, I want to talk about the major points I wanted to get across. That a supporting road network in the community, that balanced network. I showed earlier the picture of Des Moines. Think of a road network as a tree. Sometimes our road networks end up looking like bushes or like cacti, I guess. We want a good space. We want few major roadways that carry lots of traffic, spaced out every half mile to a mile, having that balanced system. So many places, and especially in commercial areas, we've had high capacity roadways, or roadways that are meant to be for long distance travel. Route 66, for example, classic example, all the national highway system going through every small town in Iowa, that major roadway became Main Street. And Main Street was fine with that traffic back in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, but after the interstate system was created and people started traveling more, those main streets often became congested, and we didn't do a very good job of preserving that traffic until we built bypasses. And sometimes we didn't even protect those bypasses. So because of that, a city often don't build supporting road networks. They got to realize that a high capacity, high speed roadway needs to remain that, not just a center for commercial activity, because eventually that's not going to always work out and you're going to have to bypass in a lot of cases. So providing that supporting road network as a transportation planner in your design, your city design, city comprehensive plan, you need to know that you need a certain density of roadways and a collection of all kinds of roadways. You need good arterials and collectors well spaced out to carry the traffic so that we can separate these. We have the arterials for the high-speed traffic, and as Sue said, that's not a place for complete streets or for traffic calming on high-speed arterials. It's everywhere else that you get the benefit because you move the traffic off there. So let's keep those systems balanced. And then once again, when they are, even on those high-speed roadways, we can provide good circulation places that are aesthetically pleasing, fun to be, they're inviting, if we just do a good job with site design and circulation. So instead of a strip development, a node development essentially. And most of you are familiar with that. I'm going to go through a couple examples real quick. Obviously safety benefits, when we see decreases in crashes, we see with cars, vehicles, we see decreases in crashes with pedestrians and bicycles as well. There's just fewer places to have conflicts. Every one of those driveways. They're a lot easier just to walk down around a street with no driveways than one that has a lot. That's just common sense. Roadway continuity as well, and separating the conflict points. We want to make sure that along roadways we have that continual system where people are comfortable with what they see, and that they have this driver expectations aren't violated. When sometimes we break things, we change from high density to low density. There's many roadways that have good managed access on one side, poorly managed access on the other. That roadway continuity is very important. Separating those conflicts I talked about already quite a bit. So I'm going to talk about a few case studies. I'm going to show them real quick. I only have a few minutes left. I talked about node development. Good practices of development clustering rather than strip development, and good internal site circulation is the key. So it's getting all the high-speed traffic off that main road, getting it onto the land development, circulating it well in a good design, so that that low-speed traffic can move efficiently and also provide for a good environment for pedestrians. So here's an example of a really good node development. You have the road along the east-west road, we'll call it, along the bottom of this page. We have one driveway access in the middle. That's a minor road or a minor roadway access, and then off of that, one full and one partial access onto a large development. You have some right-in and right-out accesses on that same side as well, but no left turns there. So really the left turns in all funnel right into the middle, and there aren't any driveways except for another major intersection. In a lot of cases they'll be signalized. It looks like the main road is signalized. In contrary, you have a strip development, a classic strip development with about 4 billion driveways, everything along a strip, and this doesn't need to happen. So we just need to plan at the community level. The transportation planners, those approving site designs, need to understand that we can do a better job in sites. And in my experience, it's never been that people don't agree with this. It's usually a communication issue, and a timing issue. That at the last minute, we tell Walmart that, oh, by the way, you need to close that driveway, or you need to not put that driveway in there. If you tell them at the last minute, that can be kind of a pain in the butt for Walmart. But if you tell Walmart or Target ahead of time that, by the way, we have a policy that says no direct access onto major highway XYZ, they know that going in, and turning their design plan or just making a slight change or using another design plan is not a big deal if it's early in the process. So I found most of the conflict being a communication, or most of the problems being a problem with communication and the timing of it. Start this process early, have these plans in place in your community, think of your network in terms I've talked about today, and when development does come, you already have those goals in place. Managing driveways is pretty simple. Fewer driveways near intersections. I went over that. Consolidating access. We've done it in a lot of places. We take them out. We consolidate them into one or two accesses with full accesses and maybe a few right-in, right-out accesses. Once again, removing those left-turn conflicts. Well, here we see multiple access with minimum spacing. You're just going to have problems here. Everybody's driven down these roads. It's not fun. Good access spacing. This is in a rural area. I'm not going to spend too much time about this, but this is a planned area in the Des Moines area where they have a corridor management agreement. I've done corridor management agreements in rural areas, which is great, protecting a high-speed, wide corridor over long distances from signals and high-speed accesses to protect against severe crashes. In urban areas, they're very especially helpful in guiding land use and guiding development by the cities or the county, whoever might be the entities involved, deciding ahead of time that along this corridor, highway, whatever, between the three, along a 6-mile stretch that runs between 3 communities, we're going to pick where we want the access. We're going to put in curb cuts, but they're going to be planned ahead of time. The infrastructure is going to be there, or the infrastructure is going to be the right-of-way, off-right-of-way infrastructure is going to be set aside in the right place where we know where roads go in the future. That's where they go and nothing else. Overland Park, Kansas has done a great job doing this, planning out their major roadways ahead of time. Des Moines area, several places. It's just good practice. It's smart. It's just everybody's on agreement from day one. You don't have a developer coming saying, but I want to do this. You just, sorry, this is the way it is. We've all agreed this. It's very powerful. Obviously, no consolidation of access points here. This actually gives me a headache looking at this. And then alternative access, those package and frontage roads. I think Sue's description of 6th Avenue in Des Moines and the package road coming, that's a perfect example of the type of development, and it's a win-win. You get more storage off the main line as well as a more aesthetically pleasing area. Here's another example of functional area of an intersection. I showed this in a diagram earlier, getting those driveways away from that intersection so you have the storage and the deceleration, the reaction time coming towards there. Great visibility is also important too, but you have great visibility at someplace like a Blimpie or a gas station here without direct access. Gas stations are notorious for wanting 11 accesses onto every roadway nearby because they want to make sure everybody can get gas there. But at some point, that's just not going to work. And you can still provide reasonable access. In Iowa here, we have a law. We provide reasonable access, not necessarily direct access for land development, you can provide that and at the same time still help a business succeed with visibility and other things. But if everybody plays by the same rules, it's level playing ground. Okay, so I have now ran through those last few slides. It's a little bit afternoon. I want to talk about some conclusions and takeaways. I mentioned the common ground of safety, fewer driveways, traffic, moving higher speed traffic onto roads they should be on, and letting the lower speed land access roadways do what they need to do and provide more aesthetics, provide for biking and for pedestrians. So that's where I really see a lot of this coming together, where Sue and I can agree on a lot. Not that we were ever in conflict before, but I can definitely see the world I often work in and the world Sue works in. Those people, it's usually not a disagreement in goals, it's a communication issue. You need to communicate with your engineer, you communicate with your city council, with your community designers, community leaders on what they want and what the roadway system folks want, the people that are responsible for that, and finding some common ground. And there is plenty of common ground. And I think Sue did a great job demonstrating that, and I hope you all understand that. So at this point, I think I'm going to turn it over to Christine for open discussion, questions. I don't know if it's really open discussion. You guys get to type them in, and I get to answer them, or Sue does. So go ahead, Christine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of questions that have already been coming in, so let's just dive right in. I'm going to take this screen back just so that I can have both of your contact information up.
Sure.
During the Q&A.
Yeah, mine's right there, but she also has it on the other slide. So feel free to contact me with any questions.
Okay, great. Okay. All right. Our first question is, at what point is it advisable to convert a TWLTL, so two-way left turn lane, to a full median?
That's a good question. If you asked the business owners, never. If you ask a traffic engineer, I think it's in the, and I'd have to check on this, it's been years since I really did traffic engineering, the low 20s, the mid 20,000s, they just break down. It depends on if it's a two-way, three-lane two-way left turn lane or a four-lane, five-lane left turn lane. Those obviously have different capacities, but at some point, yeah, the two-way left turn lane is great when you go from fairly low volumes into the teens. You can go from a four-lane to a five-lane with a twiddle. But that twiddle at some point, when it gets over 20,000 vehicles a day, and especially those peak volumes in a commercial area, when you get over that, Ames, for example, South Duff, stop functioning. At some point, there's going to be enough crashes, enough deaths, enough angry citizens calling in. They're going to have to do something. And that's something, maybe driveway consolidations, that might be a full median. A full median is going to be very, very unpopular with the business community. And as we know, we always don't always do things that make the most sense. I was asking Ames to come and comment on whether there should be joint access between a new land development and the one next door, and I said, well, absolutely, have them work together, have everybody pour out under the same signal. 6 months later, nope, they have a 4-inch strip of grass between the two parking lots where they don't actually go together, and now there's a driveway that nobody can get in and out of over lunch. So sorry I took so long, but in general, we're starting into the 20,000s. We're now looking at close to 30,000 vehicles a day in some of these areas. They need to break down, but getting it done is a different thing.
Okay, thank you. This next question is also for you.
Does that answer the question, I hope?
Yeah, I think so. They'll type in if they have anything further, and I can circle back on that. The next question is also for you, Chris. What are some of the critical concerns with determining the level of access management and complete streets for a boulevard replacing a downtown freeway?
Oh, gosh. There are a lot of guidelines, space guidelines, depending on the state you're working in. They're, for free flow traffic or for traffic flow for operations. Now, if you're going from something that's high-speed freeway, this is something I've heard like this before. I think Rockford, Illinois, or other cities somewhere around there. And Rockford, you're out there, and I'm saying, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but people have asked about this. What's a high-speed roadway, and trying to basically traffic calm it down. Depending on the speeds, that's going to be a little bit different, but the exact spacing, depending on not knowing land use, it's really hard to say. I'd have to know, feel free to contact me with the specifics, though, of what you're doing, where you're going to and from. And if I can't find the answer, I can find someone else. There are guidelines for the type of facility, because it could still be a state route, that sort of thing. But it's always down, the fewer the better, is a simple answer.
Okay, great. This question is for Sue. Sue, how much success has been had in realizing constructing the community design lab concepts? Uh-oh, you're sounding very low. If we can hear you, we can't really hear you at all.
Sorry about that.
Can you try testing again? Sound check. Sorry guys, we're working on a sound check with Sue. Let me see if I can get there. We have a couple more questions for Sue, but let's see if we can get a couple more here for Chris.
Okay.
All right, let's try this. How can you require development to be accessed through an adjoining parcel's driveway when the properties have different owners?
Well, it's often difficult. It's often political. This is exactly what I was talking about happening in Ames. Now, if it's a state highway, whoever owns that road or has jurisdiction of the road has the right to grant access. For example, U.S. State Highway through a college town that I live in, where there was a parcel that adjoined the roadway, but there's nothing on it. They were redeveloping it, and there was 4 inches between them and the next roadway. You do not have to grant a state DOT, at least in Iowa and many DOTs, because you have the right to grant access. You just don't have to grant it. You say, sorry, we're not going to grant you. Go work with so-and-so to do it. Or the city can have a policy too. But it's all ordinance-based and it's all law-based. You have to really have the right laws in place and the right practices in place where you really force them to talk to each other, and it just makes more sense. But unfortunately, politics. In this case, we had a very popular landowner who had lots of influence. I suggested go talk to big box retailer next door, put in a joint access where you can all your traffic can then go out to a signalized intersection with completely controlled access and no driveway access onto it. But he said, well, back 50 years ago, they had a Dairy Queen here, and they had a driveway, so I deserve one. Well, not actually. In Iowa and in many places, you don't deserve direct access. You don't have a right to direct access. You have reasonable access. So how can I tell you to make developers talk to each other? Make it as difficult as possible for them not to talk to each other. That'd be my suggestion. So, and figuring out who on the roadway who can provide that access. They don't necessarily, in most cases, have a right to that access. You can force them to talk to each other.
Great.
Do we have Sue back yet?
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yay!
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's fine. You're back in action. Would you like me to repeat the last question for you?
Sure.
Okay. How much success has been had in realizing constructing the community design lab concepts?
Yeah, I'd say we've had success over the years with varying communities. So that one example was from the Des Moines 6th Avenue corridor, with how the research that we brought to them and the engagement that we put them through helped them make decisions about their corridor's development. I think in Maquoketa, the pictures that I showed of the designs that we created as concepts for their city park, that identity has gotten through even though that project hasn't been completed. So for example, the implementation of building that city park is still in process, but we've gotten feedback from people that are moving back to Maquoketa that know that they're going to have a complete streets corridor and that know that there's going to be more arts and community space as a result of the vacant lot being redeveloped. And so it's nice to see how when a community can communicate that identity that they're going for, and when they're given the research and the engagement tactics and the design, that they can move forward with some of those pieces.
Great, thank you. This next question is also for you. What are some of the most common features or characteristics of complete streets?
Yeah, great. So some of the most common features of complete streets, like I said, it's for everyone. And so in terms of the pedestrian, this would mean very well identified crosswalks. So they might be a different color from the street. They might be bumpy, like the texture. The lines could be a lot thicker. And also another feature of a complete street is to include safe spaces for bicyclists. So that could either be a bicycle lane that's simply designated by a line. I've also seen some pictures, I believe it was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that they used sort of like a bump, sort of like a speed bump median that was protecting the bicycle lane from the rest of the road. And I think in general it's increasing the visibility of these alternate forms of transportation, or these original forms of transportation. I guess walking is one of the ones that we've had throughout time, and also slowing down the car traffic and making sure that they can see these other users of the streets and the sidewalks.
Okay, thank you. This question is for Chris. I'm interested in looking at municipal codes that help create a good transportation network. Could you suggest a few municipalities which are doing this well?
That's a really good question. I haven't, there are some corridor management agreements in place, and back to the previous question just real quickly, those are one of the most effective things. If you can get a group of communities or a community to put an overlay zone in through the policy. Now, if you're in a state that doesn't have zoning, or things like that, it's going to be much more difficult. But if you can put an overlay zone or some sort of statute in place, that would look good. And I can send you, I believe, there are several places. I'd say Overland Park's another very good example in Kansas that's done a very good job just really pre-planning their transportation system. That's an excellent example. The Des Moines area, there's some examples of corridor management agreements between some of the suburbs that do a good job coordinating their access points. Essentially, a lot of states, Colorado is a leader in access management. Florida, especially when it comes to some of the way things have developed in Florida, they do an excellent job of managing access over the years and implementing the program. North Carolina is another, Utah is another, Iowa, Minnesota's done a great job. At a state level, within those states, there's, I believe I have an access. I almost wanted to say Amarillo, Texas, or one of the cities in Texas that have done a great job, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you would contact me and ask me for samples of corridor management agreements or statutes that have worked, I will gladly look them up for you. But I also don't want to call up the wrong city either. And I'm not even in my office right now, if that's my excuse. But they are out there, especially at the state level. And I know another one would be one of the counties in Oregon where Eugene is, I believe. And I apologize for you folks in Eugene. I don't know the name of your county. Around there, there's plenty of them there, and I can help you track them down.
Hey, Chris, just so that people can contact you, your email address on this slide is different than on the slide that you shared.
That is so true. I also
do you have a T at the end of your email address?
I actually have both, Stu. There is a T. Iowa State, I'm going to make a plug for my alma mater. They invented the computer, but they still can't give us more than 8 letters in our email address. So with that, I can't use my name, but I created a listserv with the T on it, and I apologize to have both. So either one will actually work, but C. Albrecht with the T will also work, either one. So please contact me. Those are the questions, and I can forward you information. We've collected a lot of examples. We put together some handbooks that give people some guidance on what to do at the local level.
Great. Okay. Next question is for Sue. Let's see here. What types of areas are prime for complete streets to work efficiently?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of types of areas, I think it's good to try to both connect your town So maybe there's a connector street that is secondary to a primary highway that people are taking, and with that connector you can get more people that are moving from one side of your town to the other. And I'd say another prime area would be a place where you've already got a lot of mixed uses and that's fairly dense. I would say in my experience the best thing to do would be to go to the people who are walking and bicycling and find out what their routes are, because they're probably staying off of some of the main roads that don't have, or the roads that aren't managed very well in terms of access management. So they might be using these alternate routes, and those alternate routes could be made more safe for those folks. Chris, what would you say in terms of which types are prime areas for a complete street renovation?
Yeah, from a land use perspective, you're absolutely right. You know, places that are well connected, but you also have to make sure that you're not using the highest volume roadway in the community. So as long as you have another supporting road network where you have a parallel higher speed arterial, for example. Often we have bypasses around cities all over the place. Those have often abandoned a lot of central business districts. But now we're coming back, a lot of those corridors are okay for traffic, and the central business district can become a very walkable community and attract that. So it's almost reverse. But even within a city where we're not looking at a bypass situation, just make sure there's a parallel corridor that provides a good option for traffic. Because if you don't have that good option for the traffic on a higher speed roadway or a more, a better operating roadway, you're not going to get what you want on a complete street. So make sure you have equal places for the vehicles, the cars, and equal for the pedestrians and the bicyclists. That parallel corridor is very important, and having a balance of them. Once again, my favorite word, balance.
Okay, next question. What are your thoughts on dealing with door swing associated with parked vehicles adjacent to bike lanes?
Ooh.
I think that sounds like you, Sue.
I'd say that's pretty important. I've bicycled in areas like the Twin Cities where there is a conflict point between the bicycles and the parked cars in terms of opening doors. I don't know if I particularly have a best practice for that one, other than as a bicyclist I have to be super aware of when a car is occupied by someone. Hopefully the person who submitted this question has not experienced that.
I'd like to add that the more familiar folks come with, whether it's roundabouts or whatever it is, the more exposure to have to mixed-use facilities, the more the locals and the people that park along there will get used to looking and being more considerate to the cyclists. So really expanding, providing opportunities for bicyclists. You're always going to have that learning period. You're always going to have the people that don't pay attention. But as you increase the riders in an area, and as you do all these activities, if you look at Portland and other places, people look out for each other. So just keep providing more access and more opportunities for cyclists, and the people will come along. We have a couple people that might get hit by doors, and that will be bad, but let's hope that doesn't happen. But I think the more exposure you have, the better.
Do either of you think that there's an opportunity for signage to help both the cyclist and the motorist with these types of issues, whether it be, door swings or motorists making right-hand turns through a bike lane, things like that? Is there an opportunity for signage?
I think that signage is a great way to increase visibility. So, for example, my bicycle commute to work, I cross a lane that people are using to get onto a highway, and so there's a very clear sign that tells drivers to yield to pedestrians, which I think is tough after you've been on a highway for a while. You sort of forget that there might be pedestrians when you get off that highway. And I think also other visual cues are important because not everyone is always looking at the signage. So for example, in cities like Minneapolis and St. Paul, they are painting bicycle lanes this really ugly neon green, and it's visually, it draws your eye because you can see, that is not a lane that's for cars. And I'd say another another thing that helps in terms of visual cues are really wide crosswalks and heavily painted crosswalks. Sometimes we get away with the standard 2 lines, but if you can do sort of the more continental or European style of the painted rectangles, that's going to give people more of a visual cue. And I think in terms of signs, one thing is that both bicyclists need signs and drivers need signs, and they need different types of signs and at different heights. So I'll see that a yield sign will be put up for bicyclists, but it'll be about 10 feet off the ground, and when I'm on my bike, I'm only about 3 or 4 feet tall. So just making sure that when you are using signage that you're using best practices to understand the speed that that person is going at and also the height that they're probably looking at that sign from.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just add, Sue made a really good point. Pavement markings are probably just as, if not more important in this case. As a driver, just your natural, we kind of overcome with signs. There's signs everywhere. People are used to pavement markings. So if you do some pretty good pavement markings, put a lot of paint on the ground, drivers are going to notice it probably more than they are signs. So that in those places, that's been effective because it's been something that's new and something that they know with natural eyes when driving. You're always looking at the road ahead of you. You can see those markings coming up rather than off to the periphery looking at a sign. So pavement markings, absolutely. Big, bold pavement markings just automatically make drivers go, whoa, what's going on here, and slow down.
And the nice thing with paint is that it can be temporary. So I've seen better blocks where it's just a pop-up project where you're only putting in a crosswalk and a bicycle lane for a temporary amount of time, that you can use temporary paint to get the feel of it. And so if you're having a hard time selling an idea of painting in a bike lane or a crosswalk to the community or to the city that you're working with, think about using some temporary pieces, because it's not as expensive as buying a sign if you're simply going to be doing a temporary painting of a bike lane or temporary crosswalk to just show people what it could be like if they had that piece right there.
Yeah, a good example of that, Des Moines, we had a big controversy over a 4-way to 3-way conversion, and really that's the cheapest way to change a roadway's dynamics is paint. It's cheap. Built concrete and asphalt's expensive. Paint's cheap. So all those people that said we shouldn't do this, and your reaction is, hey, we'll try it for a while. It's just a bunch of paint. If not, we'll paint over it and fix it. And they say, okay, fine, we'll try it, but we're not going to like it. Well, they end up forgetting about it and liking it, and today they still have a 3-way with bike lanes in Des Moines because of that. So it's a nice kind of gateway to get people to buy in because it doesn't seem as permanent as well, like Sue said.
Great. This next question, what are some of the environmental benefits to complete streets, aside from, reduced motor vehicle?
I think that some of the environmental benefits are you're making the active choice the easy choice, so more people are not going to be bringing the cars into that area, but they'll choose to walk or bike in that area. So if we've got decreased vehicle use, we've also could see a decrease in asthma. We could see public health benefits in terms of more people getting that physical activity. I mean, we already know that people who use public transportation are 3 times as likely as automobile drivers to get their recommended daily allowance of 30 minutes of physical activity. Also in terms of environmental benefits, as you saw with some of the examples that the Community Design Lab is working on, we can partner these pedestrian-friendly, safe spaces with something like stormwater management. So if you go back to one of our images from the 6th Avenue corridor in Des Moines, we've got plantings that were slowing stormwater runoff. We're making it beautiful by having this sort of like a grass hedge along the sidewalk. So it's beautification, you're adding more diversity in terms of plants to that area. And then for the example of Makokada, we had given them also the opportunity for street trees. And as I'm sure you all know, when you plant a tree next to a street, it's going to slow your traffic. it's going to increase shade, so it's going to be more comfortable for pedestrians to be in that area, and then drivers in that area are going to slow down, which is also going to make it safer. So you can, the nice thing is that depending on who you're talking to, you can pull these different benefits out of your back pocket. And I think that's the benefit that Chris has, is that he knows what the planners want to see and he knows what the traffic engineers want to see. So just making sure to plan ahead for those conversations so you know what sort of benefits people are going to want to hear about.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add that, less cars, obviously you're going to have some aesthetics, and when you can take some traffic off corridor, take down the, remove the turns, get the traffic onto a higher speed roadway, you're going to plant those trees, you're going to have more aesthetics, more aesthetically pleasing, and more shade, example, cooling off. That's going to help a lot of cases when you have trees along the corridor, not just for slowing traffic down. The shade is going to have a cooling effect in a lot of ways, an environmental benefit. The other big thing Sue mentioned was permeable surface. More you can remove concrete and put in plantings or any kind of permeable surface to soak down road water, you're going to help with any of the flooding. You're going to recharge. I mean, it's a win-win with your daylighting streams, whatever it might be. That's all has environmental benefit. It's all stuff that fits so well into complete streets. And one last thing also we always talk about in addition to aesthetics is noise. Less cars, less noise. And that's a big environmental benefit that can change the character of a community or an area of a community.
Great. Well, believe it or not, this brings us to 2:30 Eastern Time and the end of our session. So thank you, Chris Albrecht and Sue DeBleek and the Iowa chapter and the rest of the consortium. This was a really great session and a great way to introduce the integration of two fields that tend to separate themselves. So again, thanks to the both of you, and thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you next time. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Bye.